Good morning. This is Pastor Moore. Today we'll have a small talk, faith and mental health. I have Reverend Dr. Charles Bates, and he's an expert in this field, so he's going to bless us today so we can get a full understanding. Reverend Charles.
Thank you, Reverend Moore. Good morning, Facebook friends. I'm delighted to share this time with you. I have been in this field for about 12 years now, and I'm just here to share my expertise with you for those of you who might be struggling with mental health issues. Perhaps not you, but folks within your family or your social network, and so that hopefully you might be able to have some ways of helping them or understanding what they might be experiencing.
Now, can you help us understand what is mental health? What's the challenges family face? X, Y, Z.
Yeah, certainly. So mental health, there are five. Well, I have included two, but experts have looked at three elements of mental health. So we talk about the physical, the social, the emotional, the cognitive. You can also put an emotional, but also spiritual. Those aspects, and they all work in tandem. One does not work separately from the other. So, for example, physically, if you are not well, something else is going to happen. You may not be able to cognitively process things. Spiritually, you might be drained. Emotionally, you might be imbalanced. And so they all work together. So that is why it is good to look at it holistically. And when we talk about mental health, your health should be holistically well. And so that is the whole idea of mental health. We'll talk about mental health.
So how do we bring the spiritual equation into this?
Yeah, so we have a lot of counselors who do not have the spiritual, psychological integration into their work, and that is not to put them down. But one of the things that I do, for example, is that I'm a pastor, and I have training in spiritual integrated psychotherapy. And so when people come and dealing with issues that might be spiritual, I'm able to help them find out exactly what is going on. So counselors are different from psychotherapists. Well, we can go and seek counseling, but to be a psychotherapist, you have to go beneath the surface, because someone may come and present with an issue, but that may not be exactly what they're dealing with. So by going beneath the surface, you are able to fully understand what they are dealing with. So don't be fooled by what someone tells you that is happening to them. They may well be correct, but it is always good, and that is why the psychotherapists are there. They will go beneath the surface to really find out whether what they present is correct or whether it is something more than what they're saying.
So what are some of the signs I guess we should look for as parents, as friends, as X, Y, Z, because we're not familiar with some of these issues sometimes.
Yeah, it is good to be observant. So socially, you might find someone who is withdrawn. That is a very clear sign that something is going on, because they are not doing what they used to do. Well, they have friends and they're withdrawn from their friends. They do not have any social outlets. That is a key sign. With regards to our young people, you need to look at their grades. Perhaps grades are not what they used to be. They are sleeping more than they're supposed to be sleeping. They are withdrawn even from family gathering. Those are basic, simple symptoms. I'm saying simple, but they're basic in that you will know simply because this is not how your child has been functioning. The key thing would be, one of the key things would be to see how their grades had dropped. That is a very key part of what we need to look at.
Now, being from Liberia, Africa, there's an African element to these challenges that we face also. I know growing up back home, we said the man crazy, the man cracking, not fully understanding. How do we communicate to folks from, I guess, from Africa to get a better understanding that everything is witchcraft or everything is X, Y, Z, but how do we help them get an understanding?
Yeah, so this is through education. The stigma when it comes to mental health, it is so severe that it will require a good bit of work in terms of communication and education. Those are the key to let people know that it is an ailment. This is not who the individual is. This is an ailment that can be cured by medication management and therapy. And when those two things are combined, statistics will show that healing can take place. But there must be a willingness on the part of the individual to participate because they're going to do the work. The counselor or the therapist is only going to guide the process, but they're going to do the work. So transparency is important, for example, by reporting exactly what they're going through, what they're feeling, what they're sensing, their way of thinking, their way of behaving. Those things are very important in terms of helping the counselor understand what they might need to do.
Okay, now in the U.S. we have an election going on. Will that affect folks in different ways, shape or form?
Without a doubt. I'm not a politician, but people are worried. People are concerned. There's some people who are just saddened by the discourse. There's a lack of civility, for example. People do not speak kindly to each other. I was talking to a young man the other day who wants to put up a sign for one of the presidential nominees, but he's afraid that he will be singled out and that people would know that he supports this candidate. So there's a sense of sadness, there's a sense of anger to a greater extent. Okay. And so people, we find this, and we find a lot of people trying to go into counseling to help them deal with this fear. Anger, with regards to politicians, promising to do things and not fulfilling their promise. So they're stuck. Do we go with this person? Do we take the risk? And all of those factors are things to consider when it comes to an election, for example.
So let me shift a little bit. So as a family person, you alluded to that earlier, but how do I engage? Because we're not familiar with these signs, as you mentioned. So how do we engage our child, our loved one? And when you talk about stigmatism, also some folks are afraid sometimes to call the cops because we know what happens sometimes. Folks are mentally deranged. So how do you give guidance, to a parent and say, hey, this is a specific area you need to check. Not specific area, but I guess it's so broad. So how do you give a parent guidance in that direction?
Yeah, so if a parent came to me and wanted to seek counseling for a minor child, the likelihood is that both of them will be in that room.
Okay.
Because the child is a minor. With their permission, perhaps, depending on the age of the child, with permission, that child may want to say something but might be fearful that, the parents are there, so they may not want to say it. And so with their permission, I may end up speaking for a few moments with that child, just to get some clarity with regards to whether there's a sense of fear, anxiety, and so forth and so on. But the counsel will be to the parent will be, you have to be transparent. You have to listen to your children, because what they say, is important, and they want to be validated. They want to be affirmed. So validation, affirmation, listening to them to hear really what they're saying, rephrasing the question to ensure that you really understand what they're saying, and that you're listening to them. Okay. Because one of the key elements will be that if, for instance, they get to know, and this would be the case with an adult as well, if they realize that you do not fully understand, they will be very reluctant to say anything more to you.
Okay. If you have comments and questions for Dr. Bate, go right ahead and do it. He'll respond to that. We're live today. We want to give God praise for the time and effort that God has given him to be a blessing to us. So let's continue to move on with this topic. As as take for example from being you went to Liberia not too long ago. What
Yeah.
was the assessment of Liberia? What happened there? Why did you go to Liberia? And update us.
Yeah, so I was in Liberia. I try to go every year if I'm able to raise sufficient funds to go. If not, I go every other year. And so the Base Foundation has invested in the mental awareness where we provide hope and healing for the Liberian population,
Okay.
Liberians and residents at large. For those of you who may not be aware, our audience, the Liberian country on the west coast of Africa has gone through 2 decades of civil war. And so even though guns are not firing anymore in the country, but there's a war, or several wars that are still going on. The war of unemployment, the war of teenage pregnancy, and you can just name it. People are stigmatized to the place where they have withdrawn from society. Unemployment is so high. Illiteracy rate, those are all constructs. And so what the Base family through the Base Foundation has done is to go back and invest. This is our small contribution that we can make to the country. We were blessed to have fled the war like many people were. But we have come to the United States and we have been trained in various areas, and my area of expertise is counseling. And so I go back on behalf of the family, and up till this year, August, we have now trained 1,000 people. We have reached the 1,000 mark, fully understanding what it means to deal with what they're dealing with, and to have the capacity to manage what they're dealing with. So that is what we are doing, and we're trying to decentralize, because for the time we have been going, we have been in Monrovia area.
Okay.
We have people this time come from San Nicolas, Nima County. People came from Bassa. People came from Lofa County.
Okay.
And so people are coming from all over the place, and we realize the challenge is to travel that distance to come to Monrovia. And so we're now trying to decentralize by going to them and trying to help them where they are.
So how long has the foundation existed?
Well, this foundation has been in place since 2010.
Okay.
But we have gradually worked our way to the mental health part of it. The mental health part of the foundation's work started in 2019. So we are investing in the young people.
Okay.
For example, the foundation has built a library in Carisburg, our hometown, for the public school system. We talk about the literacy rate. The kids are reading below level.
Okay.
So we have erected a library there in Carisburg. The foundation is also working in Grand Bassa County, where as I do, and many of our listeners who might be watching, there are a lot of indigent children with our parents, since the civil crisis. So the foundation does run a school ministering to those population in that part of the country.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so do you train trainers to assist? They don't have the level of education, but you train trainers to assist in helping Liberia?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're doing right now is to try to create capacity.
Okay.
And by that I mean, so this is what you know. This is what you have. How can you work with what you have without wishfully thinking that you had more? Because the reality is that what you have, if you don't utilize that and wait for people to come to help you, the problem is that you might just be stuck over a period of time. So we are inviting them, training them so that they can be teachers, right? So for example, in Liberia, when things happen to people, the set of people that they go to first will be the spiritual leaders and the community leaders. Those are the people that we will consider to be the triage.
Okay.
And so we have invited spiritual leaders and community leaders to be part of this work that we're doing, so that we can begin to help them to understand the basic symptoms.
Okay.
So that when they see those things, because of the lack of qualified professionals there, what we do is to have consultation with them,
Okay.
sometime twice a month. So what they see, they report to us, and then we can give them feedback to help go back to those persons and help them say, well, we believe that this is what you might be doing.
Okay.
But it is just so difficult. So what we're trying to do is to empower them,
Okay.
so that rather than having to call us for consultation, they are equipped to work with the population that they're dealing with in their communities. And transportation is just so difficult there. So we're basically finding people who will work in their communities,
Okay.
so that they're not struggling to go beyond their means.
Now, another thing on this question. So, do you have a percentage ratio of mental health facilities in Liberia as compared to the population? Any idea?
No, there's not. There's not. We were privileged to be in conversation with one of the assistant ministers at the Ministry of Health for mental health. And we understand that for a very, very long time, we only had one psychiatrist for the population of 5.2 million people.
Okay.
And I recall when the psychiatrist came online and just pleaded with qualified people to go back to help because he was exhausted.
Okay.
We do know right now that there are people who are being trained to be psychiatrists.
Okay.
Right there in Liberia, they do have help from the international community. Psychologists are being trained.
Okay.
And so, hope is on the horizon.
Okay.
And so we're going to have those people local. But what we're doing in the meantime is to go back and help to empower, have conversation with, the powers to be who are relevant to the mental health healing of the Liberian population, so that we can coordinate and do some work together.
So if you're in the U.S. and you want to volunteer to assist your foundation, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, you can go to our website, thebasefoundation.org, and that is all one word, thebasefoundation.org. And there are opportunities there to help. There are opportunities there to send comments to us with regards to, what you think, how we can be better. We solicit those kinds of information. There are times we're sending materials, instructional materials,
Okay.
that are costly. We have invested in trying to get some of the young girls who, teenage pregnancy, who
Okay.
Some of the men, just leave them, abandon them. There is a group, or there are several groups of people who have now partnered with us.
Okay.
These young women and young men who are dealing with addictions. They do come to our training. We work with them. At times, we're able to provide money to send them for, detox.
Okay.
And there's a young girl that we met this time when we went past August that just unfortunately been out of school, got a child, now supporting the child by herself, and that the foundation through us were able to send her to school. She took a picture with one of the brightest smiles that we could ever see,
Praise
to
God.
say thank you for trusting me. I promise that I will not betray your trust. So there's just one story of so many stories of how the young people there are in desperate need of getting back into school and doing what they can to eventually contribute to the country.
Okay, to keep me on track, I have some questions here. I want to stay focused so we don't stay too long. Let me ask you this question. What are some effective ways for family members to approach a loved one about the mental health concerns? What are some effective ways? Because there's one thing we don't know is too well. We just get up and say what we want to say. Something wrong with you, you're not functioning as you should. What's your problem? X, Y, Z, da, 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 da. But at least can you give us some guidance? Those who are streaming with us live or in the future might see this podcast.
So people who are dealing with mental health issues, I will give you an example of myself to help flesh through what we're dealing with. when you do not have anybody, you need to have each other as families,
Okay.
right? And that is the mantra that my family embody. When
Okay.
we didn't have anyone, we had each other. When we came to the United States, we were all depressed. We
Okay.
didn't realize it because we didn't know what the symptoms were. Some of it would manifest in so many different ways. But one of the key or several key elements that I would like to recommend is that I have open conversation, be authentic,
Okay.
be affirming, be supportive. But the key element would be to listen, listen, listen. It is what the person feels.
Okay.
It is what they are dealing with. So they are telling you, and you can only observe and make reference to what you have heard and get feedback to ensure that you heard the right thing. Because as long as you're hearing the right thing, you would better be able to support them in ways that they need to be supported.
Okay. Again, if you want to volunteer and partner along with the Bates Foundation, you can always reach. What's the information again?
The Bates Foundation, thebasefoundation.org. And be mindful because there are several people that call us to say that when we went online and there are several Bates foundations, but your key will be to look for the red, white, and blue flag with the blue few in the left corner with the white star. That is Liberia. That is when you will know that you are at the right basefoundation.org. And there's a palm tree with someone that looks like a mother and two kids. You cannot miss that because it is so well defined. You will know that you're at the right place.
Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier, learn to listen. I know we have 2 ears, but it's tough to do. And you've been in this field. Yeah, you're a human also. I know it's challenging sometimes. We can go out and teach folks when you come home, you have to deal with your wife, right? So help us understand what are effective tools to use so we can focus to listen properly and not just on our emotional feeling or what our perception is and we don't listen keenly. How can you help us in that line?
One of the problems that go into that is that people all have already come with a preconceived notion of what is happening.
Okay.
Right? You have to go in there without any preconceived notion. You're basically there to affirm this person who has confided in you to let you know or to share with you their story, right? To me, that is a unique thing that someone can confide in me to share their story. Who am I that they want to share their story? So I receive that with humility, with great humility. And so if you go into that conversation with a great sense of humility, knowing that this person has honored you so much so to tell their story, you will have the capacity and ability to listen, right? Not just hearing what they're saying, but listening in such a way that you can provide feedback to help them understand that they have been heard. And as long as people realize that they have been heard, there's a sense of validation that someone, today really heard me. There are places in our communities, it could be home, it could be on the job, it could be in our communities, sometimes sadly in the church, that people are not heard.
Okay.
And they look for an outlet to be heard. And as long as they can confide in you and you go into it in a preconceived notion of who they are, because sometimes we end up rendering judgment before we even speak with people.
Oh, yeah.
And so to make sure those are bracketed so that you do not go into that conversation with a bias, I think you will do well.
Okay. Now, can you recap on a few strategic points that signs that we need to be aware of as parents, as loved ones, as friends? When we started earlier, you mentioned a few critical things that we need to observe. Can you reiterate that?
Yeah, certainly. So we talk about if it is a child, look at grades.
Okay.
Grades are one of the things that we look at to see whether they're still on the level that they were at.
Okay.
Because if they're going through those things, grades are going to drop dramatically.
Okay.
Look at their social well-being. The people that they connected with, those who they went out with, have they withdrawn?
Okay.
Withdrawal is another thing. You need to also look at eating habits or sleeping habits.
Really?
When those things change, those are signs and symptoms that something is going on that you need to consider having conversation about.
Okay.
Maybe another thing is, even the family.
Okay.
Gathering around the family table. If it is a custom and this person just doesn't feel like being around, those are all signs and symptoms to know that you need to find out what is going on. But another key element is when you're finding out.
Okay.
Do not be judgmental. Do not ask questions as if to say you're condemning the person or something that will cause harm.
Okay.
Right? So we use the word in the field of observation, right? I observed that, or I noticed that. I noticed that you're not sitting around the table with us anymore.
Okay.
Or I observed that you're not sitting around the table. I observed that you're sleeping longer than you usually do. It is your observation.
Okay.
You cannot be wrong based on what you observe. But if you went to the extent of saying, you're not eating with us anymore.
What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you?
You misbehaving?
Yeah, or you're not with your friends anymore. You're not hanging out with your friends. It sounds condescending,
Okay.
right? But if you use the I statement, it is uniquely your observation that will not be questioned so much because it is what you have uniquely observed.
Okay. So I observe X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
We had this habit. I no longer see that. So daughter, I observe X, Y, Z is going on. Can you help me understand what's going on?
Yeah.
That's as easy as it.
Yeah, you're seeking clarity, right? You're seeking clarity based on what you have observed, right? So the observation is your unique subjective opinion,
Okay.
right? Compared to raising question that will cause harm. Because when you use it like you're doing this or you're doing that, it is so condescending, it is so condemning that the responses that you're looking for, you may not necessarily get the responses. Why? The person is going to naturally withdraw because they already feel like you have assumed certain things, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes it tough, especially we from Africa. We have a traditions how things should be done, and I remember when my kids were growing up, they said, "Dad, you mean?" Okay, and I snapped at him. So I didn't get the full context, but I see. So how culture play an impact in this?
Without a doubt, culture does play. So this also comes with learning and teaching. It is best for us, from Africa, in this case Liberia. I want to be careful how I coin that because Africa is just not a country.
Okay.
But I'm speaking, from the context of being a Liberian.
Okay, gotcha.
Our culture is not of such that we have a lot of these written things that can be handed down. It is usually a narrative. There's storytelling, right? We hand the culture down by telling story and informing and educating our children and grandchildren what life was like for us.
Okay.
And so when we miss that opportunity, there's a generation of people that will lose that information. And so it's a matter of educating them to let them know, well, I may come across this way, but that is not who really I am. A part of this is my culture upbringing. And so when you try to bring that at an intersection of where you are, the intersectionality of those two cultural differences, I think that they will more readily receive it, knowing full well that you spend a lot of your adult life in a different culture. And you are now here trying to adapt to what they are growing up into.
Okay. So like the base things, I know you have to go somewhere. I just thought we share this with you. And I think if you're interested, we'd probably see if we can get together maybe every Saturday by Zoom or whatever necessary to continually discuss this matter because it's very critical in our lives, especially not just Africans, but worldwide. In the U.S., it doesn't matter wherever you are. Now folks are getting sensitive to these issues. Any comments you want to make before we close, sir?
Well, Reverend Moore, thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation this morning. To our friends who are watching live, we thank you for joining in. This is a passion of mine. I would just self-disclose that when I came to the States in, I think it was 1993, I was depressed. But I knew that I could not, in a very fast-paced society, continue to live the status quo and live that kind of lifestyle. I had to do something. So it was a lot of hard blood and sweat to get to where I'm at. And through my family organization, we're just simply trying to pay it forward. And so if you're interested in knowing more, go to thebasefoundation.org and you'll find ways that you can be an integral part of this, even where you are. Thank you for listening.
God bless. Bye-bye.